Okay, I'm very excited to be talking with Brian Patrick Eha. He is a contributor to Fortune and the New Yorker, and he's the author of a new book called How Money Got Free, Bitcoin and the Fight for the Future of Finance. Now, it turns out there's a lot more to Bitcoin than just a cryptocurrency, and I really want to dive into that. But Brian, give us a sort of the 1-minute summary of what everyone should know about the state of Bitcoin today.
Well, Bitcoin was created and released in January 2009 with the promise to be a truly universal currency, a form of electronic cash that could be sent around the globe in minutes, and it would work as well in Seattle as it does in Shanghai. One of the revolutionary things about it is that the transactions all take place on a network that exists independently of any government or bank. For the first couple of years of its existence, Bitcoin had no real monetary value. Today, it's worth about 4,000 US dollars, which is a remarkable growth in less than a decade. And
Wow.
the report out of Cambridge University this past April found that the number of cryptocurrency users worldwide now rivals the population of small countries. So I think other than perhaps the iPhone or something like that, you'd be hard-pressed to find a technology that has exploded as rapidly as Bitcoin and indeed the whole area of cryptocurrency has.
How come I don't feel that? In other words, I'm a financial advisor in my day job. I don't actually feel that people are using Bitcoin. I mean, I see it around or I see stories about it, but no one's ever tried to pay me in Bitcoin, and I've never bought stocks with Bitcoin.
Well, I do think there's a long way to go in terms of penetration into people's everyday lives. But I think one of the reasons is that there is a tremendous amount of inertia with the existing kind of financial system in the developed world. And I should emphasize the developed world because there are smart people who argue that where Bitcoin or some other cryptocurrency will truly make its major inroads initially is going to be in developing nations where people don't have access to traditional financial services. For instance, there are 2 billion adults worldwide who don't even have a bank account. And then the group gets even larger when you include people who are known as the so-called underbanked. They may have access to some form of financial services, but not the full panoply that we enjoy. And so, although Bitcoin is used transactionally, you can find stories of people who have bought houses or cars with Bitcoin or paid their electricity bills in Bitcoin or a number of other things. And there are thousands of merchants around the world accepting it. And then certainly there are even larger number of people, I think, speculating in it as a commodity. You're right that the average Westerner is still using a credit card or something like that to pay many of his bills. And by Westerner, I mean, again, developed nations.
Well, that speculation certainly makes a lot of people wonder, is this just another Tulipmania that we saw in the 17th century in Amsterdam, that people got so excited about something that didn't really have value because Bitcoin has nothing backing it?
Well, there, I think it's a real false equivalency. I mean, a tulip is a tulip. It's a flower, right? There's not much you can do with it besides display it on your mantelpiece, and then it wilts and dies. Bitcoin is something that we were never able to do before it existed. Namely, it allows you to send value from one side of the world to the other in minutes, directly from person to person, without needing the permission or the infrastructure of any middleman, any government, payment system, or bank. And not only is this tremendously kind of freeing, but it's also tremendously powerful because of what people refer to as its censorship resistance. In other words, as long as you're having to rely on PayPal or a bank or something like that to hold your money, send your money, it can always be, your account could be frozen. Your money something could happen to it in transit, or you could end up in a dispute with your bank over some transaction that didn't go through. With Bitcoin, you are your own bank if you want to be, and no one can prevent you from spending your money or sending it to whomever you wish.
Yeah, this sounds a little bit shadowy. The reason that the banks and PayPal and the like have so many restrictions or are able to restrict you so much has a lot to do because of government and regulation. And I would think that the moment that the government begins to sense that people are using this on a large scale for illicit activities, they'll find a way to regulate it, or they'll just put enough people in jail until they self-regulate. Isn't that the direction that the governments would take because they want to control all of this?
Think of how paper cash is regulated. If you use it for criminal purposes and you're caught doing so, you'll certainly be thrown in jail. but you're not going to be thrown in jail for using cash. You'll be thrown in jail for the criminal activity that you were funding or paying for with cash.
Well, it's very hard to use cash. If someone comes into my office with $100,000 in cash or goes into a bank, that's a very reportable event. It's not going to just be, oh, no problem, here, deposit the money. Again, small money is no big deal, but it seems to me that when people are dealing in big money, that's what gets the attention of the regulators.
Well, certainly Bitcoin presents some new challenges to law enforcement, but they have not really proven to be insurmountable challenges, at least not in some high-profile cases such as the shutdown of the black marketplace Silk Road. And I think different people may have their own views on whether the pros of allowing people to transact freely with one another electronically in the internet age, but with something that serves as a form of digital cash or digital gold, in that you can just sort of hand it directly from person to person without going through a middleman. Some people will think that is on balance a good thing, despite some of the, downsides, and other people perhaps may feel differently. The truth is it exists and it has value because of what it's able to do. And there are plenty of people who are interested in this other than criminals.
We're talking with Patrick Eha, who wrote the book How Money Got Free, Bitcoin and the Fight for the Future of Finance. Brian, as you're talking about this, we're actually sort of moving from the technical side of the discussion about how a person transfers money from here to there. And I hear there's a whole philosophy. It almost sounds libertarian. When you were researching for your book, what is the philosophy that you discovered about the people involved in the whole Bitcoin movement?
Actually, even beyond libertarianism, there's this movement known as crypto anarchy. And crypto anarchists are essentially people who want to use encryption technology and peer-to-peer network culture to increase personal liberty and undermine the state. And as a philosophical movement, crypto anarchy emerged in the early 1990s in California among a group of people who called themselves cypherpunks. And they were organized around this electronic mailing list, not unlike the one on which Satoshi Nakamoto would later announce his invention of Bitcoin. Now, by the time Bitcoin came along, crypto anarchists had been talking for years about the need for digital cash, but no one could figure out how to make it work until Satoshi, who was inspired by some of these early efforts. But you're right that crypto anarchists were kind of among the first to see the potential of Bitcoin and start using it. And they and these kind of digital libertarians found it tremendously interesting, even before it had the huge monetary value that's now attracting a lot more mainstream investors and Silicon Valley types and so on. And so although Bitcoin users some of them have even clashed with the ideals of these radical early adopters, ordinary people, maybe like you and me, would probably never have heard of Bitcoin if not for these crypto anarchists.
It seems to me that another benefit of Bitcoin is not just the currency itself, but there's a whole technology behind it that's going to allow people to do much more than just send money back and forth. Am I on the right track here?
No, absolutely. So there's something called the blockchain, which is the technological breakthrough that makes Bitcoin possible. It's basically a decentralized, tamper-proof ledger for recording transactions. Now, that sounds like the least sexy thing in the world, but the revolutionary thing about it is that it allows for transactions to be verified and recorded without the need for a central authority or a third party, which normally would be a payments company, a government, or a bank. And so businesses and services can be decentralized, which simultaneously cuts out middlemen and also removes any single points of failure in the system. And so while a lot of financial institutions remain wary of Bitcoin itself, not all of them, but many of them, they have seized eagerly on blockchain technology because then it holds out the promise of huge cost savings in their back office, faster, better payments, and they've all set up blockchain labs and working groups to study it. In fact, I believe 9 out of 10 banking professionals surveyed at large North American and European commercial banks said their company was exploring the use of blockchain tech for payments, and nearly a third were in an advanced stage of adopting it. That was earlier this year.
Wow, there's certainly a lot changing in the field. It actually sounds that people who are interested in seeing the direction of the world of finance have to really begin to understand Bitcoin and the whole blockchain technology. Brian, it seems to me that one of the best ways for people to do that is to actually pick up a copy of your book. So in the last few seconds, tell us, how can people follow you and follow your work?
Sure. Well, I'm on Twitter. That's probably where I'm most active on terms of social media. My handle is at Brian, Brianeha, and you can pick up the book in bookstores in the UK and North America. You can get it from Amazon.com as a Kindle or as a hardcover book. Or if you like other ebook formats, it's available through Apple's iBooks or the Google Play Store, and I think a few others. So you've got a variety of options. I'm not actually sure about Israel, but I recently was sent a photo of my book being sold in the Singapore airport. So
Nice.
It's possible that it's being sold in Israel in physical copies as well. That'd be great.
All right. Well, we will put links to the places people can buy the book as well as to your Twitter at the show notes of today's show at goldsteinongelt.com. Brian Patrick Eha, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me, Doug.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt Show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Check out all of Doug's money ideas at goldsteinongelt.com. Doug specializes in helping people who live outside the United States handle their U.S. investment accounts. If you have a question that you would like answered on the air or off, contact Doug at his website or send him an email to doug@profile-financial.com.